Historic. A moment or time of great and lasting importance. That is the only way one can describe the ongoing attempt by Canal Plus to buy MultiChoice and form the largest behemoth in African media broadcasting, possibly going toe-to-toe with the biggest broadcasters in the world.
It's quite big. It's a paid TV provider. It's even known across Europe for covering sports, for covering everything. So it's basically like, I want to say, the DSTV equivalent.
But what will the result of the proposed merger be, and how will it affect the African media landscape? Let's find out.
Well, the whole sort of pay TV, the whole satellite DTH pay TV model is under threat. And Africa is one of the few places, the last places, where it's still sort of maintaining its position. But you can see even South Africa, the number of subscriptions that have dropped. It brings with it this whole new thing, a sense of ease, of convenience, of cost, access to a broader range of content. It's still a pay TV space, but you pay a lot less and you get a lot more. You can manage access to it a lot easier. So it's a powerful proposition that we're faced with.
So if they're going to be bringing something like Canal Plus, there better be employment. I mean, youth unemployment is at 60%. It's not good, maybe even more. So there better be employment. And also there's just that MultiChoice projects have been so good in the past 10 years for creating employment, for storytelling for South Africans.
So, the French media giant Canal Plus has finally made its long-anticipated move to acquire MultiChoice, the largest pay TV operator on the African continent. Over the last 4 years, Canal Plus has been buying up shares in MultiChoice, starting with a 6.5% stake in October 2020, which now stands at over 40%. But why are they doing this deal, and why now? To use a Game of Thrones analogy, the winter is coming.
Because doing what DSTV have been doing by fragmenting that and making like a special thing available like for 69 Rand, that basically is the signal that they've actually found themselves on the slippery slope downhill. Because once the whole point about the pay TV model, that old DTH satellite model, was by bundling rights, by bundling the offering. When you start breaking that bundling down, it means your model is actually, it's stressed and it's not going to work. Now you need to move everything into the space.
Africa represents the last frontier for broadcasting. It has a young population of connected individuals with a thirst for content, but few options for where to get that content. MultiChoice has an impressive subscriber base of over 23 million people in sub-Saharan Africa, and Canal Plus has over 7 million of their own subscribers, mostly in Francophone Africa. They'd be able to pump more resources into local content production, technology and marketing, all crucial elements for success in the streaming era.
I think what gives them an advantage, certainly a big advantage against the streamers who are still trying to build a subscription base, is they both have sizable subscription bases already. They both have streaming plays. I think it's a simple matter, but you've got two different companies, two different cultures. But obviously on a strategic level, on a commercial level, there's a lot to see why it could work.
So in many ways, it prepares them to compete much better and much strongly. They are now the biggest by far on the continent. They own the biggest streamer on the continent in Showmax. So logically, it makes sense.
And the African media market is ripe for disruption. With the rise of smartphones and increasing internet connectivity, the continent is a prime target for streaming services. Netflix has already made some inroads, but Canal Plus and MultiChoice could be a real powerhouse combo.
Canal Plus and DSTV have a lot of content, and both of them have, and I think Canal Plus particularly is very valuable in terms of they've got a big studio. And studio for streaming is very important because you can't rely on acquiring rights to other studios' content, particularly if those studios are starting to stream that content themselves directly. DSTV has a strong connection with the African market in terms of what it creates local content. So you can see the two of them can put together a very strong content proposition, coupled with what Sky and the Peacock have in terms of the technology, put together a good streaming option in the African market that can be very competitive to the big guys that are out there already.
Just in terms of the countries in Africa, it'll give them over 90% of the African pay TV market. The question is, for competition authorities on the continent, they're going to have to look and balance and say, well, what are the effects on competition downstream in each country? Our authority will look at, obviously, what the impacts are in South Africa.
However, it's not all smooth sailing. There are some significant regulatory hurdles to overcome. South African law limits foreign ownership of local broadcasters to 20%, so Canal Plus would need to get creative with the ownership structure to really take control. And this is where Dr. Patrice Motsepe comes in. He will probably be the African partner in this deal. Regulators will also keep an eye on the impact that this deal could have on media diversity, consumer choice, and employment. It's a delicate balance between delivering on investment and protecting domestic interests. The addition of Sky and Peacock helps to fight against the likes of Amazon and Netflix, and they'd be able to leverage MultiChoice's existing infrastructure and customer relationships, while also tapping into Canal Plus's content library and technical expertise.
And as you talked about with Dr. Motsepe coming on board and saying, okay, you know what I mean, I'm going to take a stake, and that gives you that South African ownership level. It'll be there. Where there's a will, there's a way, and I think there's a lot of will, both from the government side and from all-party side to make this happen.
The deal will first have to be finalized. I don't think it's finalized. There's an offer being made. MultiChoice has to formally accept the offer through their shareholders. There's obviously a lot of stuff that still has to be ironed out. Once that is done, and we can see the shape of it, they will then submit it for approval to the regulators, to both ICASA and to the Competition Commission. I would think that they're very well positioned now to dominate the streaming market as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the Commission views it, because obviously they're looking, their jurisdiction is only over the South African economy, and they'll be having to take a view on the South African economy. So it'll be interesting to see how they choose to deal with it. Our competition authority in South Africa, the Competition Commission, and obviously the body above it, the Competition Tribunal, certainly has teeth. They have blocked mergers before, some very, very big mergers. They've also put strict conditions on some mergers. They've made them conditional, like saying you have to do X and Y in order for the deal to go through. So I'm quite confident that our Competition Commission will give a proper look at it.
So in the streaming future, we will likely watch a lot more content on mobile devices than on television. That may seem strange to some people, but there are 60 million people in Africa with a TV, but over 250 million people with a smartphone. And that smartphone can beam and stream digital content. The issue has been data, but that's coming down, and it will continue to come down with scale and better technology. This is why MultiChoice recently has invested so heavily in Showmax and launched a mobile-only Premier League package that costs only 69 Rand a month.
Sign up now for just 69 Rand to Showmax Premier League.
But there are concerns that reduced competition could lead to higher prices and less choice for consumers. And let's not forget about the sports rights issue. That's a big part of MultiChoice's appeal for a subscriber base.
The deal itself being finally approved by all parties, etc., it's probably 12 to 18 months and then becomes effective. But part of that is probably going to be a conversation that says you can't sign any long-term deals anymore until we come on board.
They are probably going to turn down a lot of sports rights, particularly if the other big streamers come into the space and start taking those rights and putting the money in, and accept that's the way it'll be. As the audience, you will have to, as a viewer, you will have to live with that. So you will have to choose where you watch and like that. But at the same time, we are now more able to churn. That's going to be the way it goes forward. Why pay for Netflix every month if you're not watching it every month? Pay for it the months that you want to watch it, and when you don't want to watch it, dump that subscription and watch Disney for a month, basically. And I think it's going to be a golden age for the consumer.
Premium sports rights content is just getting too expensive. So only the big players can afford to buy that. So what's likely to happen is that some of the global players may then begin to introduce some of the sports content on their platforms. I don't think that there's going to be more local, domestic parties that are able to afford the sports rights content.
with a merger like this, that you now have the two key companies that are acquiring sports rights in Africa. Usually the bids are separated into French and English, as far as the African market is concerned, is that you can see they'll say, no, we just want the rights, basically. And that as a joint bargaining position where the two parties can't be played off against each other, gives them a stronger position to sort of acquire rights.
I'm really worried about the local rights holders. Have competitions, your local leagues, like the local leagues that are on DSTV, like PSL and Zambia and Ethiopia, etc. It's gonna take a lot of work for them to attract the attention of a big global player who is not as focused on Africa as MultiChoice was.
But Canal Plus has to recoup the funds that they spend, and rights holders may be worried. The problem is, Canal Plus has to tread carefully on what they cut in order to keep consumers happy.
SABC across its channels has increased the number of football programs that are making the top 20 list. But those are all now overseas programs. It's the PSL that is just not getting enough eyeballs. The game is suffering, and the league and its ability and its connection to the fans is being damaged.
But while external pressure is building on MultiChoice, it also faces more domestic pressure after the Competition Tribunal ruled that they cannot place sub-license restrictions on the state broadcaster SABC and E-Media's rights for a period of 6 months, while they examine a case brought by both the SABC and E-Media on the fairness of certain sub-license clauses. But what are these clauses and why were they implemented?
What it was trying to do is block the SABC from creating momentum or activating content that people would be excited about in the digital space, in the streaming space. So the clause was that SABC was not allowed to broadcast any content that they sub-licensed from SuperSport or from DSTV on any platform that wasn't delivered via a terrestrial broadcast feed. So in other words, only on the analog channels. Particularly because we were looking at time to start our digital first SABC Sport channel, which would be playing in the digital space, that was going to go onto the OpenView platform, onto SABC Plus, and realizing suddenly that we couldn't actually broadcast the PSL on that channel or on any channel in those platforms because of the way that clause had come up. And we did a lot of research, got a lot of top people in economists from outside, from international economists, top legal minds to look at this, and they said very much so, you've got a strong case here. It's these clauses are untenable, these clauses are unfair. Clearly, the main thing is not to let the SABC get a hold in that market, basically.
MultiChoice's legal argument seems to be, in a nutshell, that they're being forced by the tribunal to give content for free to a competitor. Now, I think that's a disingenuous argument for the simple reason is SABC's already paid for the content. So it's not as if MultiChoice is giving up a new exclusivity. They've already given up for free to air. This is just additional free to air platform.
With the Competition Tribunal having granted interim relief to the SABC and E-Media, it's clear that MultiChoice isn't a stranger to regulatory challenges. However, they'll be doing their very best to ensure that this transaction with Canal Plus goes through. But what happens if it doesn't go through?
We need these companies at the moment to keep that media space going, working with the legacy that they have. The space is changing, and they need to kind of consolidate what they have in the kind of old space, as it were, while they evolve into that new space. So in many ways, this consolidation is necessary to create a bridge to the future.
Overall, this is a high-stakes gamble for Canal Plus as they try to establish a dominant position in Africa's rapidly evolving media landscape. The potential synergies are clear for everyone to see, but navigating the regulatory environment and ensuring consumer interests are protected will be a crucial step for success in this transaction. It's an exciting time for African media, and we will keep an eye on this whole issue going forward. What do you think about what will happen? And do you think that this is a good or bad deal for Africa as a whole? Leave us your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you again soon for another Cash and Sport original.